Cari fratelli e sorelle, buongiorno. Il Vangelo di oggi narra che il giorno di Pasqua Gesù appare ai suoi discepoli nel cenacolo alla sera, portando 3 doni: la pace, la gioia e la missione apostolica. Le prime parole che egli dice sono pace a voi. Il risorto reca l'autentica pace, perché mediante il suo sacrificio sulla croce ha realizzato la riconciliazione tra Dio e l'umanità e ha vinto il peccato e la morte. Questa è la pace. I suoi discepoli per primi avevano bisogno di questa pace, perché dopo la cattura e la condanna della morte del Maestro erano piombati nello smarrimento e nella paura. E Gesù si presenta vivo in mezzo a loro e mostrando le sue piaghe, Gesù ha voluto conservare le sue piaghe. Mostrando le sue piaghe nel corpo glorioso, dona la pace come frutto della sua vittoria. Ma quella sera non era presente l'Apostolo Tommaso. Informato di questo straordinario avvenimento, egli, incredulo dinanzi alla testimonianza degli altri apostoli, pretende di verificare di persona la verità di quanto essi affermano. 8 giorni dopo, cioè proprio come oggi, si ripete l'apparizione. Gesù viene incontro all'incredulità di Tommaso, invitandolo a toccare le sue piaghe. Infine, ringrazio tutti coloro che in questo periodo mi hanno inviato messaggi di auguri per la Pasqua. Il ricambio di cuore invocando ogni bene per ciascuno e per ogni famiglia. E buona domenica a tutti e per favore non dimenticatevi di pregare per me. Buon pranzo e arrivederci.
last few days is we have been on, yes, a pilgrimage to Rome and Assisi, but I have had a real strong sense that we haven't been visiting places. We have been visiting people. We started, say, on Monday when we visited St. Catherine of Siena, and we learnt about her passion for the church and how she wasn't afraid to tell anybody, no matter who that person might be, the right way of things and what God wants for our lives. We moved on we were in St. Paul's Basilica, and there we stopped at the tomb of St. Paul. We were in St. Peter's, and again, getting life from these saints who have gone before us, getting passion for the gospel and a closeness to the Lord, who they knew so well. I think all of us were deeply touched by the life of St. Rita. We can readily identify with this woman who gave so much to Christ despite of the many difficult circumstances in which she found herself. I know many of us have a renewed or a new devotion to Rita now. And then we come here to the place of St. Francis and St. Clare. And again, it is the energy of these saints, the joy of St. Francis and the prayerful devotion of St. Clare that we find so attractive, that we want to be like, that we want to imitate. So as I say, we haven't been visiting places, we've been visiting people. And whilst we've built up friendships and relationships with each other, I feel as though we've also built up relationships with these saints. As Father Dominic said the other day, these aren't plaster casts stuck in a nave somewhere. These are real people who have lived real lives and who continue to intercede for each and every one of us. Today is the feast of Philip and James, but God love them, I'm going to put them aside for a moment. Because I think the best person that we can imitate, especially as we gather in this church of Santa Maria degli Angeli, is the person of Mary, the Mother of God. We have begun this month of May, and perhaps we can both thank her for her prayerful assistance, but also try to imitate her in our lives. There she was in that room in Nazareth, and the angel appeared to her. Readily she said yes to God. And what happened? She received the very person of Jesus into her body. But she didn't keep Jesus to herself. Again, as we know from the Gospels, she went out from that place without second thinking to her cousin hundreds of miles away, across the Galilean countryside, across the Judean desert, way up into the hills, to be with this old woman who was in need of help, because the Lord was with her. Elizabeth's first words to her were, "The child in my womb leapt for joy." John, within Elizabeth, knew the presence of Christ in Mary. You, by this pilgrimage, have received again that gift of God, the very person of Christ within you. So let us be like Mary. Let us leave this place and travel hundreds of miles to the people that we know and love, to our relatives, so that when we walk in that door, they too leap for joy, not just at seeing us, but discovering within us God anew, Christ within us, always among us.